Continuing on with the book of Peterson, this is page 23 on Rising Up. He starts out the first paragraph about how people are bullied because they can't fight back. But then he says sometimes people are bullied because they won't fight back. And particularly it says it happens that for some reason or another they had come to the conclusion that all forms of aggression, including even feelings of anger, are morally wrong. I have seen people with a particularly acute sensitivity to petty tyranny and over-aggressive competitiveness restrict within themselves all the emotions that might give rise to such things. Often there are people whose fathers were excessively angry and controlling. Psychological forces are never unidimensional in their value. However, in the truly appalling potential of anger and aggression to produce cruelty and mayhem is balanced by the ability of those primordial forces to push back against oppression, speak truth, and motivate resolute movement forward in times of strife, uncertainty, and danger. With their capacity for aggression straight-jacketed within a too narrow morality, those who are only or merely compassionate and self-sacrificing and naive and exploitable cannot call forth the genuine righteous and appropriately self-protective anger necessary to defend themselves. If you could bite, you generally don't have to. When skillfully integrated, the ability to respond with aggression and violence decreases rather than increases the probability that actual aggression will become necessary. If you say no early in the cycle of oppression and you mean what you say, which means you state your refusal in no uncertain terms and stand behind it, then the scope for oppression on the part of the oppressor will remain properly bounded and limited. The forces of tyranny expand inexorably to fill the space made available for their existence. People who refuse to muster appropriately self-protective territorial responses are laid open to exploitation as much as those who genuinely can't stand up for their own rights because of a more essential inability or a true imbalance in power. Naive, harmless people usually guide their perceptions and actions with a few simple axioms. People are basically good. No one really wants to hurt anyone else. The threat and certainly the use of force, physically or otherwise, is wrong. These axioms collapse or worse in the presence of individuals who are genuinely malevolent. Worse means that naive beliefs can become a positive invitation to abuse because those who aim to harm have become specialized to prey on people who think precisely such things. Under such conditions, the axioms of harmlessness must be retooled. In my clinical practice, I often draw the attention of my clients who think that good people never become angry to the stark realities of their own resentments. No one likes to be pushed around, but people often put up with it for too long, so I get them to see their resentment first as anger and then as an indication that something needs to be said if not done, not least because honesty demands it. Then I get them to see such action as part of the force that holds tyranny at bay at the social level as much as the individual. Many bureaucracies have petty authoritarians within them, generating unnecessary rules and procedures simply to express and cement power. Such people produce powerful undercurrents of resentment around them, which, if expressed, would limit their expression of pathological power. It is in this manner that the willingness of the individual to stand up for him or herself protects everyone from the corruption of society. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. When naive people discover the capacity for anger within themselves, they are shocked, sometimes severely. A profound example of that can be found in the susceptibility of new soldiers to post-traumatic stress disorder, which often occurs because of something they watch themselves doing rather than because of something that has happened to them. They react like the monsters they can truly be in extreme battlefield conditions, and the revelation of that capacity undoes their world. And no wonder perhaps they assume that all of history's terrible perpetrators were people totally unlike themselves. Perhaps they were never able to see within themselves a capacity for oppression and bullying, and perhaps not their capacity for assertion and success as well. I have had clients who are terrified into literally years of daily hysterical convulsions by the sheer look of malevolence on their attackers' faces. Such individuals typically come from hyper-sheltered families where nothing terrible is allowed to exist, and everything is fairyland wonderful. Or else, when the awakening occurs, when once naive people recognize in themselves the seeds of evil and monstrosity and see themselves as dangerous, at least potentially, their fear decreases. They develop more self respect and perhaps they begin to resist oppression. They see that they have the ability to withstand because they are terrible too. They see they can and must stand up because they begin to understand how genuinely monstrous they will become otherwise, feeding on their resentment, transforming it into the most destructive of wishes. To say it again, there's very little difference between the capacity for mayhem and destruction integrated in strength of character. This is one of the most difficult lessons of life. Maybe you're a loser, or maybe you're not. But if you are, you don't have to continue in that mode. Maybe you have a bad habit. Maybe you just have a bad habit. Maybe you're even just a collection of bad habits. No, nonetheless, even if you came by your poor posture, honestly, even if you were unpopular or bullied at home or in grade school, it's not necessarily appropriate now. Circumstances change. If you slump around with the same bearing that characterizes a defeated lobster, people will assign you a lower status. The old counter that you share with crustaceans sitting at the very base of your brain will assign you a low dominance number. Then your brain will not produce as much serotonin. This will make you less happy, more anxious and sad, more likely to back down when you should stand up for yourself. It will also decrease the probability that you'll get to live in a good neighborhood, have access to the highest quality resources, and obtain a healthy, desirable mate. It will render you more likely to abuse cocaine and alcohol as you live for the present in a world full of uncertain futures. It will increase your susceptibility to heart disease, cancer, and dementia. Oh no, it's just not good. Circumstances change, and so can you. Positive feedback loops adding effect to effect can spiral counterproductively in a negative direction, but can also work to get you ahead. That's the other far more optimistic lesson of Price's Law in the Pareto distribution. Those who start to have will probably get more. Some of these upwardly moving loops can occur in your own private subjective space. Alterations in body language offer an important example. If you're asked by a researcher to move your facial muscles, standing up means voluntarily accepting the burden of being your nervous system. You step forward to take your place in the dominance and occupy. Manifest your willingness to defend and expand and transform. To stand up straight with your shoulders back is to accept the terrible responsibility of life with eyes wide open. It means deciding to voluntarily transform the chaos of potential into the realities of habitable order. It means adopting the burden of self-conscious vulnerability and accepting the end of the unconscious paradise of childhood where finitude and mortality are only dimly comprehended. It means willingly undertaking the sacrifices necessary to generate a productive and meaningful reality. Your posture, because of the lobsters. Stand up straight. Put your shoulders back. Stand up straight. Good, nice and straight.